Hey Matt, how are you?
Good. How are you?
We are live. I just put it up, so sorry about that. I wasn't sure if it was going to be
Hmm.
working, but it is.
That's all
Um,
right.
one one little trouble. I'm having some issues with my good old audio, as you can imagine.
Uh-huh.
I need you to help me with my video.
Okay, you've come to the right place.
Hang on, hon, I'll see if this works. Speak to me.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you see me? Got me?
Hmm.
No?
Oh, there we go. Hey,
Yep. Hey, hey.
how are you?
I'm all right. I'm all right. Just
Yeah.
yeah, hanging in there. We not to be a downer, but we got news that my grandfather passed away yesterday. So
Oh, I'm really sorry to hear that.
yeah, it's all right. It's we've sort of just been aware of it for the last week and sort of had a bit of time to work through that, but it's tough. You can't be
Yeah.
with people, hug people, and stuff. But otherwise, we're hanging in there. We're doing all right, sticking around. So, yeah. How are you?
Yeah, I'm okay, okay. And look, my condolences. I'm really sorry to hear that. And I lost someone, I lost a friend during this time too. So I know how shitty it is when you can't be there to hold people's hands and do what you need to do. So I do send my condolences to you all.
Thanks.
But yeah, I'm okay. I'm kind of just processing the life that is locked down in 2020. So and adapting
Yeah.
accordingly. So yeah, it's it's been interesting. It's been interesting, but I think that the fun side around it is that nowadays we can actually working in a digital environment. I guess to some extent we can find new ways of doing things, and obviously we're lucky we've got the internet to be able to communicate and connect with people and see people and do everything that we need to do, which I'm sure you have a few words on as well.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely a trial by fire for a lot of people as far as like getting everything up and running remotely. And yeah, it's presented a few new unique challenges in what we do. But yeah, I'm sure we'll get into it in some
Yeah,
detail. Definitely.
exactly.
Yeah.
Well, look, hey, look, and thank you so much for joining me today. And I guess this has been something I'm really excited to talk about because a lot of people that I've been speaking to lately have kept coming up around content and how to really connect with people on an online environment and obviously make sure that whatever they're putting out there is gets cut through and
Mm.
how to create content and all that fun stuff. And content can be really scary for a lot of people, especially I find it terrifying because I'm not a natural creative. I'm a analytical, strategic planner. So I'm really excited to have you on and to really discuss a few tips and tricks that people can look for to be able to really connect with audiences online. But first and foremost, I might just get you to do a bit of a rundown as to who you are. And I've put a bit of a bio up in the group, but I think it's really good for people to have an understanding of your background and why you're qualified to have this conversation with me.
To talk about stuff.
Yeah, yeah,
Well,
yeah.
yeah, I'm Matt. I run Balloon Tree Productions. So we've been around. It'll be 9 years tomorrow, actually. The company's been
Congratulations.
long. Thank you. It's funny how 9 years later I'm back working at a desk at the end of a bed, but that's we'll leave that for another time. But yeah, we do pretty much all things content creation. So video production's the main one,
Yeah.
and we do everything from big TV commercials through to social media content, some more internal comms and training material, as well as other content. So podcasting,
Yeah.
whether it's video or just audio, and photography as well. So we work with a pretty broad range of clients, everything from kind of retail space through to service-based businesses, massive franchises or single kind of entrepreneurial, sole trader type businesses as well. But ultimately, it's about storytelling and kind of communicating stuff through content, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
Doesn't really matter how big you are. You've always got a story to tell and you've got to communicate stuff to your audience, whether it's customers, consumers, stakeholders, whatever. So yeah, that's what we really love doing.
Awesome. And, and I love that about you because you've had experience across such a spectrum of content. And as you said, it is really about storytelling at the end of the day. And I think when it comes to content, as I mentioned earlier, people do tend to get quite terrified around the concept of, creating something that's engaging. But I think let's maybe just start around what are the fundamentals? You said storytelling. What are the fundamentals of good content, especially visual content? And primarily, how do you go about identifying what is a good piece of visual content?
Sure. Well, look, I mean, it's kind of a cliche, but it's always got to come back to the why. Why are you actually making something? Why are you actually wanting to put something out there in the world? And often, the best stuff, especially now, right? Like where everybody's doing things remotely and filming things through Zoom or stuff like this, the quality level of it doesn't have to be as high if the content itself is authentic and real and valuable.
Yeah.
So if you're out there wanting to educate people, to support people, to, lend a hand, show that you're there, and that message is authentic and real to your offering as a business, brand, person, whatever, that's the key. That's where the cut through comes in because people connect with that. So often, like there's an ad I've seen around for, I think it's Lexus, and it's like, oh, we're here for you in this trying time. We can come pick up your car and then deliver it back to you and it's serviced. And it's like, there's some level of that just feels so disingenuous. It's like so there's kind of that side of the thing versus a lot of stuff I'm seeing on like LinkedIn is people, business owners talking from the heart about, hey, this is really tough. These are the struggles we're going through, but here's what we can do to help. And it's all very, very genuine. It might not be a direct salesy type thing, but it's that authentic connection and care that you would have goes so much better. It builds that loyalty. It builds that sort of brand recognition and trust that is so key. So that's really like the linchpin of everything you do. Because if it's not authentic, it won't stack up and hold people's attention. It's sort of wasted time and resources at that point.
I think that's really good advice. And I guess, Matt, let's bring it back a bit. How do you start off by, if you've got a brand that you're working with, how do you start off by even understanding what kind of content to create? Like, do you go through a research process? Do you go through what is your process to be able to understand where this brand sits in the marketplace, what kind of content they should create? What do you guys go through?
Look, it varies client to client, but it's always some form of discovery. Yeah. So it's about figuring out, what is out there currently that the brand's putting out there. Is there marketing material? Is there logos, graphic design stuff? What's the vibe and the tone and the brand voice? Because you want, again, part of that authenticity is making sure that it feels consistent and it's repeatable as well. You don't want to put out one thing that feels really dissimilar to everything else because that brand won't have the same sort of value across it. So there's a lot of that and sort of seeing what has come before and what they're wanting to achieve. But then also just kind of engaging with the people themselves and going, what drives you? What's your passions? What's your motivations? Because, like, to use a completely different example of like training material, right? Yeah. You've got in bigger companies, it's a department that's going out to maybe a national company. There's a really sort of key message about educating their staff, but it's also like, well, they know all the pain points that people are going through and how they're going to be consuming this stuff. So delivering a message in a way that understands the context that people are going to receive it as well is really important. You take that to like a TV commercial, social media where people can just scroll past it. Knowing that context will help sort of determine how you bring people back in as well. So a lot of discovery, a lot of sort of looking at what has come before and then where you want to go with it, and then throwing ideas around, seeing what sticks. That's the beauty of what we do, is that there's no real hard and fast answer to it. You can kind of just experiment and see what feels right. It's a lot of instinct and gut feeling. And if it feels right, it probably is, because it's that authentic, real sort of thing.
Yeah, and I think, look, the same principles apply, I guess, all around with marketing. But the thing I love about, like, particularly social media and digital, is the ability to be able to almost re-engage or engage with your audience and find out what matters to them. And I think that's kind of what you're alluding to there, is that I think what people or business owners tend to get caught up in a lot is they think that they know best around what their audience thinks, feels, needs. And, you just said it before about that Lexus example. I guarantee you that is going to fall flat on so many people. And I think if you don't understand the kind of content they consume, but also the language and what their real motivators are at the given time when you're creating a campaign, I think it's a real detriment. And that's where you see a lot of really bad faux pas and a lot of bad ads out there. So I guess around that, when it comes to, like, say if you get a brief, and maybe it's let's say it's an e-commerce brand, for example, and I know you guys work with Specsavers and a few bigger, I guess, retailers like that. So how do you go about understanding, okay, we have here's my glasses, which obviously I should be wearing, but I'm not. So we've got, there we go. Yes, excellent. Yeah. You're a smart brand. Yeah. If you've got, for example, 1,000 units of these to sell, and you've got a brief that says, hey, look, we reckon that this product is going to be really resonating with 30 to 45-year-olds. We've done a bit of research and got some feedback, and that they love that they're lightweight and they're easy to store and that kind of thing. What would be basically, so you know your KPI, you know the kind of target market, you know the benefits. Again, for people, write a brief if you're getting a creative agency involved to be really clear around what your goals are. We can talk about that too, but what do you go through then, using that as more of a live example, to be able to kind of create some ideas or things to come back with to be able to break this into content?
Sure. So if we use Specsavers as an example, they've got a really clear brand voice, right? So they're kind of cheeky, they're humorous. It's the should have gone to Specsavers stuff. So oftentimes that'll factor into the approach to it. As part of something like this, where you say you're launching a specific frame or something like that, if there's an element that's like purely just brand awareness, that's one thing, but it also might be retargeting. It might be like people sat on your website, had a look at it, then you're pushing out retargeted ads to people that have been there. So again, the language of those two things is slightly different. One's a introduction to the product, its benefits, its service, whatever, and the other's a, hey, remember this is really cool, you should come back and get it. So it's again knowing the context in which people are going to see this stuff and how much a barrier to entry or education you've got to provide to sort of get them over the line. But for something like that, again, it's weirdly, like, we are part of the marketing department, and KPIs and stuff, like, we don't necessarily worry too much about, because that's in the execution of like ad spend and stuff on it. It's really on the creative execution of it. And if it's like a really unique designer pair of glasses or something, then the creative will represent that. It's got to feel as edgy and exciting and bold and whatever as the design itself. Whereas if it's a more conservative type thing where it's just sort of very understated design, you kind of want that. It's going to be a slower paced, a bit more deliberate in its delivery. So there's a lot of stuff to consider in that. But also, if it's part of a broader campaign, you want to have multiple, or at least a few different touch points that feed into that. So one of the things we're seeing a huge trend across every industry is no longer are you spending, thousands of dollars on one video and that's it. It's not your big hero TV commercial and that's it. You've got all your other channels. You've got your Facebook page, your Instagram, TikTok, even on your website, maybe TV. So you've got to have, again, a creative that can work across each platform, but also be unique to each of them, because an Instagram user that's seeing stuff on stories is a very different experience to somebody on your website that's very different to somebody on TikTok. So knowing your audience and where they're going to be viewing this stuff's really important. But then it comes back to making sure that the creative represents the actual product you're putting out there. So really driving into all right, what's the points of difference here? What's the unique selling point of this object versus other stuff? Is it a purely brand awareness thing? Are you going, hey, we're Specsavers, come and have a look at our stuff? Or is it, hey, we're Specsavers and check out this really cool pair of glasses. This is why this is the best thing. So it's sort of weighing up all of the bits and pieces. So in a way, it's being really clear around the messaging. Is that what I'm taking from this as well? So,
so I guess this is so funny because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm a data person. So I always think about the KPI, the end goal, and it's, I guess, we get the we get the creative to distribute. That's really what a lot of media buyers do, or advertisers do. So, but still, if we get creative that isn't on brief in terms of not talking in the right language or the right putting the right messages across to make people realize the value of this certain product or whatever, it obviously falls flat. So I guess that's really a really important distinction to know, that if you are going to create any kind of video, it's about, you know, creating the right brief process for you. So I'm going to throw that to you now. So when people are doing a brief, and I think this can be done if they're briefing an agency like yours, or they're just creating a brief for themselves to be really clear around what they're doing, what kind of things do you need to consider and think about? Just be really clear and outline it in that process.
Yeah, a big one's buyer persona. That's huge, and I know you know, like
a little overview as to how you see a buyer persona, because I don't think everyone in here would necessarily know what that is. Yeah,
it's just a really, really, really specific way of outlining who your target market is. So you know, again, we use the example we were just talking about. Maybe it's going to appeal to sort of 24 to 35-year-old, you know, females, right? That's great, but that's 10 years of experience and difference and stuff like that. So inside that, you might have sort of 2 or 3 really clear examples of who that is. So you might be like, this is Bianca. She's 25 and is doing her master's of, I don't know, law at blah, blah, blah. She loves ice hockey, and, you know, like, to the point where you're like describing this person's wants and feelings and passions and pain points. They go, oh, but she doesn't have enough time to cook. She loves cooking. So it's like, it's so detailed that you have a really clear idea of who this person is, and you're talking to Bianca, but by extension, Bianca represents a really, really strong of your audience. And then you do that for however many audience types you think you have for that specific product. That makes it really clear, because then you're talking to people, not a audience or demographic.
Yeah.
So that's a really strong one. Again, being really clear with your platform, so where you're going to market to these people, because they're a very different experience. And if you're making something that's going to be across multiple platforms, just from a technical point of view, it impacts stuff. So, you know, you might be doing some vertical video on Instagram stories, but it's going on a website as well. You don't want to have to shoot things multiple times to get that. If you can capture it in 4K or something, and you can crop in for the different aspect ratio, you can kind of plan ahead for that stuff too. It's cheaper to sort of bulk shoot it in that way. So really clear on your platforms, your audience, so your buyer personas, and then any sort of key information that has to be in there, any non-negotiables. Like if you need to put in, offer starts this Friday at midday and ends, you know, midnight tonight, whatever, like that needs to go in the brief, because if we don't know that, then it's not going to go in there. So any non-negotiables, key information that has to be communicated is important too. They're kind of the pillars of a really strong brief. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think, even as I said before, like even if you're not getting another or a content producer to do this for you, I think it's really, the amount of times I've seen people forget to put the fact, even if it's like e-commerce, right? Our sale is, as you said, is from Friday to Sunday. The key things when people need to know, the call to action, it's really, really important that you outline it first before going rogue. So thank you for going through that. And I think, as you said before, buyer personas are so important, because there could be a 34-year-old who's very different to a 36-year-old, and understanding them, what they go through on a day-to-day basis, and the motivations, and with the buyer personas as well. Obviously, this year we've learned a lot about this. What they think and how they feel can change considerably if there's a massive thing that's happened. So obviously, the buyer persona you created for a brand in January can be very different to what's happening in today. You know what I mean? So these things can change, and I don't think people should be afraid to just think that things are set in stone. You've got to be looking, and this is why I love social media, because you can see your audience in real time commenting and saying things that they care about, and you can start to take some of that insight into your creative and respond accordingly. And I think that's so powerful with the value of social. And so just touching on
I was going to say on that, like, because, you know, if we're talking e-commerce, right, like all of the data that you can get from Facebook and from everything, like you build a buyer persona that's really strong and key to what you're doing, you just target that, and then it hits them directly with creative that appeals to them. Like, it's sort of a marriage made in heaven at that point. So yeah, if you put the time into it, just really exploring what that person or those people look like to you, all the way down to, you know, the color of their shoes, it does you such a good job in the long run, for sure.
Oh my God, I totally agree with that. And this comes down to the ability, especially nowadays with social media. Again, so obviously going the digital route because that's what I know.
Yeah.
But you know, I was working in media when it was just TVCs and just the traditional, I guess, broadcast kind of content. So the difference now is that you can be, as you said, you can be personalized. You can actually have different variants for different people. So the more personalized you can create your content, talking to a specific group, the more relevance that you're going to have, rather than a TVC that 25 to 54-year-olds, everyone's got to see it, right? You know, that kind of old school buy. Now, I'm really interested, you mentioned before how when it comes to social and digital, there's so many different formats around what you can use. So you can have video like this on Facebook, you can have Instagram stories, you can have, Snapchat videos, whatever it may be. So I guess, what do you guys, what do you consider when you're going down that route? You mentioned before that you can shoot in 4K. I think maybe give a bit more of an overview as to what that means and how people can create things, I guess, that can be reused across multiple platforms without having to really break the bank a lot of the time.
Sure. So in its simplest terms, 4K just refers to the resolution of the image you're capturing. So traditionally, broadcast TV's 720p. It's a standard or a high definition format. But basically the sort of classic HD, I'm going to give you a lot of numbers here, sorry, but 1080p might be, say, this size, right? And then 4K is 4 times that, so you end up with that, right? So if you're then mastering something down into 1080, you can actually crop into that 4K square and you're not going to lose any resolution. It's
not going to look blurry. That's when we talk about resolution.
Technical execution of it. But from the actual capturing a thing, right? Like, we've done some stuff where it's event coverage, so you only get one chance to do it, and they're like, we want to put some stuff on stories, we want to put some stuff on a website. So naturally, you need to shoot stuff wider. So, it might be like, again, say this is our frame and there's a model walking down a catwalk or something. You don't want to shoot it nice and tight on her face or whatever for the widescreen version if you've got to crop in. Otherwise, you end up with like a shot like this and it's awful. So there's a lot of like technical considerations to know ahead of time if you're going to try and hit different platforms. That, again, why planning all of this stuff and knowing in advance where you're going to put it is important, because you can retrofit stuff, and I'm sure you've seen things where there's like a 16:9 video squished onto an Instagram stories inside the black bars at the top and bottom, and it works, but it's not, again, authentic to that platform. It's the user experience comes into it where they go, oh, this has just been shoved on here. It's not made for me and my Instagram viewing, behavior.
Completely.
So that's one thing to really consider with that. What was the question? I sort of started rambling about aspect ratios, and then
it is. It's just more about how can you create content that is going to be able to be reused across multiple platforms, I guess. And I think that's and thank you for outlining what a lot of that technical stuff is, because a lot of people, especially if you look on Facebook, it gives you recommendations. It should be 720 or whatever. Like I know enough, but for most people, they probably see that and go, what the hell does that mean? So thank you for outlining that. But I guess when it gets to creating content that is going to be able to be reused across, especially from a digital perspective, are there any tricks or tips outside of, if I'm creating content on my phone or on my camera, that I can do? What can people start to think about before they go down that route and making it too long or too far down the track so you can change things?
Sure. Look, there's a couple of things. Obviously, like, if you've got a really strong established brand kind of style and voice and stuff, having generic type things up your sleeve is always good. Like, to use a really clear, well-known example, right, is Bunnings. So their ads, everybody would know them. They change the people at the top and tail, and then inside the actual ad itself, there's sort of 3 products on its classic green strip and the image and whatever. So it's really templated and it's kind of clear. Everybody understands. It's like a comfortable ad that everybody knows. So anything like that you can do that gives you, you put a lot of effort into creating something, whether it's video or photos, but then it's templated so you can iterate on it, whether it's updating the copy so it's, the new promo, the new whatever it is, but your top and tail can stay the same. That's really useful. Anything that you can have that's sort of generic that you can then repurpose for stuff as well. So just trying to think of like, if it's a clothing brand or something like that, kind of just, nice designed images of your clothes laid out that you can put, hey, 25% off today only text on, or whatever it is. Anything like that can really just, again, it feels consistent. It's going to keep that brand voice and tone authentic. But it means you're not constantly going, oh no, I got to post something today. I got to go take another picture and do whatever. Like, it's just updating the style of that. The other thing to sort of kind of stray from making stuff specifically is like, long form content's really good, because there's sort of different audiences for different parts of it. So we've found, like, in our experience with a lot of podcasts, that they might go for half an hour long or something. They live as a really good long form piece for people to dive into when they've got the time to do it. But you can actually just start pulling bits and pieces outside of that as well. So, you can pull out a little 1 minute highlight of that and repurpose that across socials. You could take a couple of pull quotes from it, write an article about a blog post or something like that. You can take 5-minute clips and sort of release those as like a series of things. So there's lots of like long form content that can be sort of then cut down and repurposed as well. So out of the half an hour or an hour it takes to produce something, you get, a bit of life out of it for a couple of weeks potentially. It all really depends on the type of business again and what you're using to do it. But yeah, there's lots of ways of just repurposing stuff and kind of setting yourself up that you don't have to reinvent the wheel every time. You can just sort of tweak a few things and it comes out consistent.
Yeah, I love what you just said then about consistency. And the Bunnings example, I think, is it's something that everyone knows, but it's something that actually is very transferable across multiple platforms. And I think if you're starting out, if you have a template like that and you just kind of fill the gaps, it's not only is it going to build brand recognition over time, it's repetition. People are going to keep seeing those colors and your logo, and if you've got a slogan, whatever it may be, they're going to continually see that, which I think is really, really important. But also the fact that it makes life a lot easier for you. And if you're not a natural creative and you just have to kind of fill the gaps with a little thing, or you're just getting or someone in your team, or you're creating video content yourself, that's such a good example. Look, I have a question from Michael, who just popped something up, and he's in the planning process of your video content, how detailed do you has the script / storyboard for something have to be like an Instagram story or a YouTube ad? Do you do that? Do you think it needs to happen, or what are some tricks around making that work?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to feel like a broken record. Again, it sort of depends on what it is. A lot of stuff, if it's a really clear, like you've got a really specific message that you're wanting to communicate, scripting it is key, right? Having it planned out and knowing what you're doing to a T is really, really important. I wouldn't go so far as necessarily like having to storyboard it, but one thing we do on most projects like that is we split the script into two parts. So on one side, it's the text, whether that's audio, like it might be an interview or a voiceover or something like that. And then the other side is the vision. So what actually lines up with that at the exact time you're hearing this thing. So let's maybe say it's like I'm running a tool shop, and the copy something like, "Hi, I'm Matt from Matt's Tools. We've got a massive sale on heaps of products. Come into our store today," right? So the first "Hi, I'm Matt from Matt's Tools" might be a shot of me talking to camera. Then we've got a big sale on, might be a shot of the warehouse with all of the tools in it. And then the next line might be a graphic saying sale on, whatever it is. So it then just removes all of the margin for error. You've got a bit of a working shot list or plan as to what you need to shoot or capture or design. So that's really good. But the flip side of it is, I've been doing like a bunch of videos on LinkedIn talking about, tips and tricks and bits and pieces, and they're specific, like they're about a certain thing. But I won't script it or plan it out, because the style of it and the benefit of it is it's just me sharing and talking about it. And I don't think I come across well if I'm scripted, but I'll need, a couple of key points to talk to. So I'll be like, cool, I'm going to talk about aspect ratios today, and I need to talk about 4K, I need to talk about vertical, and I need to talk about square and 16:9. And then they'll just be sort of points to talk to and work through that way. So it really depends on what it is again, but it is, you know, planning prevents piss poor performance. So as much as you can plan, depending on what you're doing, the better.
I think that's a motto for lifestyle, you know, as much as they can, but don't script it out, go with the flow and just kind of know your guidelines and go from there. I love that. Hey, look, there's another question here from Troy, and a hypothetical for you. Say you've got a client that is shooting content for you to work with. What are some guidelines for them to create good, consistent footage for multiple platforms? So I think it kind of alludes more to what you were saying then. But is there anything else that you kind of, I guess, elaborate on in terms of if you're a client, how I interpret that would be, you mentioned the shot list, right? Maybe let's go on a bit more about that. How to create evergreen content, I guess, or if you're doing a shoot, evergreen meaning it can be used again and again and again. What are the kind of things that you need to provide as a client to a producer like you?
Yeah. Options as much as you can provide. So say again, let's say it's a tool shop, it's a warehouse, and you want just footage that you can then repurpose across stuff. You might have a big warehouse full of bits and pieces. You want to get wides, you want to get sort of closer shots, you want to get really close up detail, you want to get obscure sort of abstract looking stuff of, you know, maybe it's a bolt head or something like that, like anything and everything, because you're never going to be like, oh, I've got too many options. Like you're always going to be like, why don't we have a shot of this, or do we have a shot of that? No. So I think, you know, putting your future proofing hat on and going, right, we've got access to this place, we're going to shoot a whole bunch of stuff, we're doing it, so let's get multiple versions of stuff. And I think on top of that, you know, it's considering that if you get a great shot, don't just settle on it. Like, go, cool, what are some other ways we can shoot this as well? Because if you're wanting to release content, you know, daily, you're going to run out of shots pretty quickly. So if it's a great shot from front on, what's it look like from this side, and what's it look like from this side? And then you've got 3 versions of this great thing that you can use that are consistent but slightly different. So yeah, it's really just about getting options and alternatives to stuff. To kind of come back to the like other considerations, I think shooting wider to start with is great. You know, there's a real tendency, probably more so with photography, I think, but to frame it up in camera and go, this looks great. But you've got such a resolution now on cameras and phones and stuff that you can probably not lose any of that. So you can always choose to do it later as opposed to commit to it then and there and go, oh, you know what, we can't put text above it. We've only got to put text to the side of it or whatever it is. And then on the last thing on that is don't delete anything. Keep all of it. Don't go through your camera and delete stuff. Like, you never know. You absolutely never know. There might be a weirdly framed shot that has all this sort of, you know, like empty frame space here, and you might be like, this might be perfect for me, like talking, put a speech bubble here or whatever. Like, you don't know. So don't delete anything in the camera. It's like, you know, 10 megabytes of photo or something, or a couple of 100 megabytes of video clip. Just keep it. Just keep it.
Yeah. I love that. And I think just to kind of recap that, I think for people, when they see who maybe aren't as experienced as others, and when it comes to video production, you're not shooting a new video every time a video goes out. And I think that's the main thing to kind of take away here. If you're going to create video content, it's about having a bank of different frames or different shots that you can then re-edit and repurpose. And I think that's something, if anyone is thinking that, don't try and it's people overthink things, and make sure that you think about, okay, hypothetically, what are some different situations where we might need video content? It could be an advertising campaign. It could be that we need to profile the staff or the team. It could be that we need to profile our premises or whatever. Do it all in one, create a shot list, create a wish list of things, and then give it to you to go, or whoever's creating the video content to go, hey, this is what we need potentially. And then as a creative, you guys would take that and create the shots, I guess. And I think that's something that people really need to keep in the back of their mind. Not that scary.
I mean, we did a gig with you guys a little while ago and shot some Christmas stuff in like March. And it was just like, we're here, we've got all the gear, everything's set up and ready to go. Let's do Christmas stuff, and we've got it. My LinkedIn videos, I think I shoot 10 at once and then release them once a week. And it's just like, I change my clothes because that makes me feel like I'm doing something different.
Oh, do that as well. That's really good advice. Make sure you've got a costume change because you don't wear the same pink top every time or whatever.
Yeah. But it's the same background every time. It's just I look different. It feels new, but it's all done in the space of half a day, and you get 3 months of work out of it. I mean, it's smarter, not harder. Having said that, there is a benefit to being timely and reactive to stuff, and yes. I think a key to being able to do that stuff is having some form of template or strategy or way you do these things that you can execute it quickly. Like. Again, Specsavers, to come back to them, they had, I think it was the day after the Oscars thing where it was like La La Land, Moonlight, the mix-up, run an ad in the paper that had like the wrong one on a card and then said should have gone to Specsavers. And you're like, they know their voice, they know how they talk, they can just mock it up, bang, you're out there. It might not appeal to everybody, but if you are wanting to make timely stuff, having a really clear way of executing that you can sort of jump on and do it straight away, it's great.
Yeah, and that's why I love, obviously, having the functionality like this, like live video and being able to create, content on your phone. I'm going to go into this in a second. It's, having a device such as this right in front of you all the time allows you to be that reactive and to also, create content that is so timely. And I guess let's maybe just segue into that a bit in terms of creating content on your own or on your phone and that kind of stuff. Are there any tips, I guess, that you would recommend for people who are maybe just starting out and using their phone when they're creating social content or digital content that you can potentially give?
Sure. I might split it into two parts. So if you're shooting people, there's two main considerations: lighting, and the second is audio. So lighting, you look at the two of us. There's nice sort of even, nice soft lighting. But we can see you, right? If that window behind you was open and it was just like beaming light, you'd be in shadow. It looks awful. I'm sat here at a desk at the end of a bed in our spare room with the two windows open, so I'm lit nicely and evenly. But if I was, facing the other way, it'd be shadowy and awful. So lighting's great because if you can't see somebody talking, game over. But audio's key. We've all sat on Zoom calls that the video's breaking up and all that sort of stuff, and you put up with it because you can still hear people. But if you can't hear it, there's this sort of robotic, crunchy, muffled audio, then it's really bad. So making sure that you're in a quiet room, a quiet space, there's no music on in the background or whatever, and it's really clear that you can hear what you're saying. It can just be through the phone audio, like the microphone. It doesn't have to be like a fancy microphone or anything. But that just helps a lot. As far as like shooting products or other things is concerned, again, you want it to be nicely lit and exposed. So, you don't want to shoot in a dark room, like open the blinds, open the windows. Natural light is the best thing. It's free. Everybody should be able to find it somewhere. So that helps just make things look bright and light and colorful. But yeah, again, just options, right? Like if you're taking photos or video of something, keep in mind, it might not be just for Instagram. It might go on your website. It might go as part of a talking video like this. So shooting a bunch of stuff and not just settling for one thing because that looks good. Kind of an eye on the bigger picture as well. That's it.
Yeah, I love Troy just put up a comment saying clean the fingerprints off your lens, and that's a really good thing because the amount of times there's crap all over the front of the screen. Thanks for that, Troy. Anyway, I'm not going to go there. So what you said about product photos is really, I think, pivotal because and being able to reuse them on either the website or even potentially if you have a store, a physical store, even sometimes you're using them in collateral at point of sale and things like that. So I know I've seen little contraptions at the moment where you can get like a mini light box, which is like it costs you like $20 or $30 off eBay or equivalent, and basically it just gives you that light all around. So if you've got a product like a phone or something like that, you can put it in and it'll give you even lights. When you go to websites and you have those white backgrounds to be able to showcase the product. Things like that, like little hacks like that, I think are really important. And I think the main thing is that if you are starting out and you don't have major budgets, you can get professional looking stuff on a budget. Like you really can.
Totally.
Are there any other tricks, I guess?
I was going to say, if anybody has an iPhone, portrait mode's great. It blurs out the background. It looks awesome. But even just, little things like set design, right? So if you don't have a little white box that you can light, and say you're taking a photo of notebooks, right? Like you might be taking a photo of this and you want to see it in situation on a desk or on a shelf or something. Yeah. It by itself on a table looks crap. So you kind of think of like, well, what else can you put in and what other texture or detail? So you might bring in pens, you might bring in some scribbled on Post-it notes and something. And like, this is the focus, but you want the environment around it to kind of evoke the situation that you would use the product in. Things like vases or candles and stuff, like light them, put them in a nice place that sort of you might have some plants behind it, or like all of this stuff just kind of helps elevate it, brings it a bit more to life. And separation between the subject and the background is really important. So the reason why the kind of white boxes and stuff work is because it's just very clearly this is your product. You don't want to shoot, again, a notebook like this next to a whole bunch of other books and it's not clear what you're doing. So you want to make sure your product's the focus of it. If you are taking a photo of, it and there's stuff behind, don't have it right in front of you. It's kind of got to have a bit of distance and separation. So
already by doing that, you can see the distance. Yeah, that's incredible.
Yeah. So just, it's really, considering the surrounds of the product that you're taking a photo of. Does it need to be clean? And is that the way to do it? Great. If it's going to be in situ, then just design that a little bit. Make sure that that's part of the image as well, because it is.
Yeah. And then it even comes back to, I guess, the personas, right? So if you're selling these glasses and your persona is a 22-year-old at university, you're probably going to put it in situ around environments where they're going to be studying or something like that. Whereas if you're a 36-year-old mum at home and your only time out is reading a book at night with bed, or you're doing your kids' homework, it's going to be a different scenario again. So and that's what I love. I think that's the power of creative, really, for me, is capturing environments or recreating environments where products can be seen in situations where your target market will recognize. And I think that is, just having a pair of glasses and a white background, all good and well on this site. But if I'm trying to target ads, mums on social, I want content that's going to really, she sees it, especially on Facebook or Instagram, and goes, whoa, okay, yeah, that's my life. And quickly can pick it up like that. Completely love that.
It's going to do this, like, plenty of inspiration. Like there's a guy on YouTube, MKBHD, who does like tech reviews and stuff. And so it's often him talking to the camera, but then, shoots photos of, shoots phones and iPads and all that sort of stuff. And rather than it just being the product, he puts it on a desk or on a table and then surrounds it with either similar colors or something like that. Just bring it to life, like your phone's the really sort of rainbow color thing. That stands out and pops really well, but surround that with some more other kind of rainbowy looking stuff or some other really reflective things, and it kind of just elevates the whole style of it. So consider it around it. It's really good.
I love that. And thank you for putting that person out there. And I think and that's another thing, like go onto YouTube and Google this, search this stuff, because there are a lot of people out there who are already giving examples of how to create set design and kind of do it for you. So don't think you've got to recreate the wheel here. There is so much good content out there already, funnily enough, video content to show you how to do video content. Now, one other thing, I guess, something that I'm conscious of, especially around social, is the fact that if you look at how social content, it naturally pops up in a timeline, it doesn't have audio all the time. So I think I'd love to know how you get around that for clients and to make sure that video content still connects with people, even if their audio isn't turned on.
Yep. Captions. Captions.
Yep.
You can, there's sort of multiple options to it. You can get You know, a service like Rev, or there's plenty of others out there that can do it for you, and they give you a little file that you upload with your video, so it'll then, you can turn it on and off. I'm pretty sure that by default it's on for Facebook and LinkedIn and all that sort of stuff already. But if you know you don't go down that line, you can always edit it and put it in the video itself, so you can't switch them off, but essentially burn them in. The alternative though is making sure that it still does something for your audience without that audio as well. You know, if you just got to think about your own content consumption. You know, like, nobody wants to admit it, but they all watch videos on the toilet or in bed next to their partner when they could be asleep, and you never use audio. You don't do it. And so having captions there, I will watch a video for longer when I'm supposed to be asleep in bed with captions than I would if I'd turned on the audio. Like, it's just kind of the way I find myself doing it. And I'm sure I'm not alone in that. But also, you know, if you're not going to hear the audio, make sure the first couple of seconds is your best stuff. Like, don't save it and go, oh, wait till like the 50-second mark, because then it's a really good payoff. Like, lead from the front, be like, man, this is the cool shot, the epic thing, whatever it is. It's why, like, movie trailers now, you watch them on YouTube, the first 5 seconds is the like bang, 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 bang logo, and then it goes into the trailer, because they know you'll click skip ad next or whatever. They want to get you in. They want to hook you with that first amazing thing. Do that for yourself, you know, like you'll have statistics on click-through or watch-through rates and all that sort of stuff. And if it's low, then front load it with all the good stuff. Like, there's no point doing it because it works. So, you know, you want to put it later and save it for the people that earn it. Like, you want ultimately to convert people and to make sales or bring people in. So give them your best stuff first. Yeah,
I totally agree with that. And like, you want to put the hook, the thing that's going to get them in, so that they want to watch more, or they want to, you know, find out more about your business or your brand or your product. I totally agree with that. And I think one other thing I want to ask you as well is, say you are selling, like, this is e-commerce example again. So you're selling a product itself. How important do you think it is to create content that tells a bigger picture around the business or the culture or the process that your product goes through in order to be delivered? Like, how do you think, what is there a benefit of that? Do you think there's any benefit? And if there is, why would you go about doing it?
Yeah, I 100% think there's a benefit to it if it's of value. So, you know, if the product's a handcrafted, you know, bespoke design thing, the story and the journey of that will impact a lot of people and be like, oh man, this is such a special product. I really want to, you know, get it. Especially stuff like where there's a personal journey to developing something or to why you're running the business or whatever it is. People love that stuff. People love people. And if you see somebody and they've done something really cool, that connects with stuff. I don't know the statistics on it, but it's, you know, faces of people go far better than just plain product shots and stuff like that. People see a smiling face and it's this natural human connection thing that you gravitate towards that. That's why, like, all the Netflix posters and ads and stuff are like faces and smiling people. And if you watch more rom-coms and stuff, then you'll see more couples. And it's that kind of algorithm goes, this is what people respond to. So definitely story and personal journey stuff's great. Because also that's the point of difference. You're the only person that's done what you've done the way you do it. And you can leverage that, as sort of gross as that might sound. That's what'll make you stand out. You know, like we're called Balloon Tree Productions. We use the fact that the name came from when I grew up in Ballarat, and it was a McDonald's playroom center, and it was like a balloon tree in the corner. It was like balloons on sticks, and it was kind of this moment of symbolism that I went, every balloon's a film and trees grow over time. And like, it's this really goofy story of when I was
I love that. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
Yeah, but it's, you know, like a nice warm fuzzy thing that you go, oh wow, it's not just a fun kind of creative name. It has some form of symbolism to it. So, you know, like any personal attachment that you can bring to a product or a service or something, just it means people trust you, they like you. There's a connection beyond like, I'm buying something from you, see you later. It's like it's what every brand aspires to at the moment, right? Where you have your I forget the word, but you know, the champions of your brand that are like, oh my goodness, I love Lexus does everything for me so much, and it's because you know exactly where they started, all this stuff. So yeah, I think if you can leverage any of that stuff, it's absolutely do it for sure.
Yeah, great advice. And I think just on that, like especially for ecom, if you have created a product from scratch and you've gone through the blood, sweat, and tears, then bring it to life. Like as you said. However, if you are a drop shipper or you're creating, you're just reselling water bottles or something like that, I would probably refrain from making up bullshit and trying to create a story, because people are very intuitive and you'll get caught out. So just make sure it's authentic is what I guess I'm trying to say, because
Exactly.
I've seen it go pear-shaped.
Yeah, exactly.
I've got another question for you as well. What are your thoughts on businesses starting dedicated YouTube channels? Should they do it, or should they just stick to safe social platforms like Insta and Facebook?
Great question. Again, I think if it's going to be consistent, then do it. Absolutely. There's multiple benefits to it. It's obviously YouTube as a search engine and SEO benefits and stuff's massive. One thing we've sort of found ourselves, because I've been asked a lot about, where do we start with ideas for content? Where do we go? And if you don't know, I think my first thing is like, well, what are your frequently asked questions? What are customers or potential clients asking you? Because that's what information they want. So start with that. And especially if it's something that people will be Googling, putting it up on YouTube as well as other platforms and stuff is kind of a no-brainer. I think if you're releasing content regularly, it's a great place to have it there, because the algorithm sort of likes constant release stuff. But it's also not a bad idea to have it if you've got a suite of stuff or a bunch of things can just live there as well. It's still searchable, it's still there, and it's just another touch point. So yeah, I think if you're going to do it consistently, then go at it. And probably having a bunch of stuff to put up there is a good place to start. But if you've got one video and you're not too sure, maybe not YouTube, but a place to sort of house a lot of stuff if you're going to keep making things. Yeah,
I totally agree. And I think it does come down to the type of business you have too. So if you're a thought leader and you're selling a service, like say you're a coach, or you've got a blog or something like that as well. And this kind of leads into another question, which is about, can blogs be also turned into YouTube videos? I think, yeah, for sure. As you said, from a search functionality standpoint, it's really, really powerful. The other thing too, though, like if we go to the other flip side and say ecom, you're probably not going to put a video that on YouTube about, this is a nice pink jumper, right? But you might put a video up about how to style that pink jumper and what it goes with, and really give people, I guess, a vision of what they can create with your product. And I think that's something to be conscious of. Don't be really literal. You've got to think about, as you said before, the value that is exchanged by you putting content out. And I think putting content out that's doesn't add any value or is just absolutely rubbish and not thought through can actually be detrimental to your business rather than supporting it. So yeah, hopefully that answers that question. And I guess just to wrap up, Matt, I'm really keen to know, is there anything that you think people need to know when it comes to video? That any tips or things that you just think are mandatory when it comes to this kind of activity that you'd like to share with us?
To be honest, it kind of comes back to the first thing I said, which is make sure it's authentic to you. You don't want to be out there posing and trying to be something you're not, because people will see through it, and it won't last. It'll do more damage than good. And I guess off the back of that, there's never going to be the perfect time to start it either.
Yes.
So just jump in and fail, but that's okay, because that's how you'll learn. As much as we're all in our businesses every day, every second of every day, dealing with it and going, oh my God, what do people think of this? Like, if you have a piece of content that people don't like, they're not going to be like, that's awful, I hate you. No, you'll just be like, keep going. So it's not, the stakes aren't awful. And so if you do stuff and you discover how you put it together best, and you can start developing a style and a voice, and then there'll be a bit more of a following, and it'll grow. That's the best thing. It doesn't have to be super flashy, and you don't have to use a production company like us. Like, you can shoot stuff that's really good on your phone, on Zoom, and get stuff out there. And then as that builds and gets traction, then you might want to step it up and engage a production company or some other professional. So get started, be authentic, and the results will hopefully come.
Matt, thank you so much. That was awesome. I've learned so much. I know a lot of people have too, and I think if you've just joined us or you haven't watched it, this will be posted on the group. Watch this. This is an incredible, I guess, training on how to make sure you create video content that is relevant, it works, and how to make sure you connect with people who actually are going to be buying your products and making a difference within hopefully your bottom line. So thank you. And look after yourself and your family. Thank you again for joining us today. I really appreciate with everything going on. And yeah, stay safe. And I will no doubt connect with you very soon. And if anyone's got any other questions, pop them down and I'll do my best to answer them. We'll get Matt on if it's a super technical one. So
yeah,
thank you again.
I'm happy to answer any questions too if anybody wants.
Oh, so, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Matt.
Thanks for having me on. And yeah.
You're so welcome, love. Have a good afternoon.